The notification popped up on my phone screen at precisely 5:36 in the morning. Critical database failure. Production environment compromised. Automated alerts were flooding my device, that familiar, irritating ping I had heard thousands of times over the span of 18 years. My mug of coffee sat untouched, steam rising slowly in the quiet kitchen. On any normal Thursday, I would have already been logged into the company virtual private network, pulling up monitoring dashboards and firing off instructions to the team. I had worked from home on Thursdays and Fridays for the past 3 years, a small concession the management made when I threatened to leave back in 2023. My home office setup was just as efficient as my desk downtown. But this morning was entirely different. I stared at the flashing red alerts on my laptop screen for exactly 15 seconds, and then I did something I had never done in my entire career. I closed the lid. Clara walked into the kitchen, already dressed in her blue scrubs for her shift at the clinic. We had been married for 20 years, which meant she could read the tension in my shoulders better than anyone else, and she knew when not to push. "Is everything okay at the office, Harvey?" she asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "Everything is fine," I said. "Just the usual work stuff." Our 12-year-old daughter, Chloe, was still asleep down the hall. Clara nodded slowly, watching my phone screen light up again. The main customer databases were melting down, and somewhere in a corner office with a view of the Boston skyline, Bradley Shaw was probably just waking up. Bradley Shaw, the newly appointed Vice President of Engineering. The same Bradley Shaw who, less than 3 months ago, could not debug a basic database connection pool issue without standing by my desk and begging for help. My name is Harvey Vance. I have been a senior systems engineer at Apex Core Solutions for 18 years, 4 months, and 12 days. When I joined, we had 60 employees in a Boston basement. Now we have over 2,400 employees, and our stock gets analyzed on national financial television. I built the infrastructure that runs this entire enterprise. Every database configuration, every recovery protocol, every automated script that keeps the servers running. I either designed it myself or trained someone else to do it, and Bradley Shaw was one of those people. He started at Apex Core 12 years ago, fresh out of college with a degree that taught him plenty of abstract engineering theory, but absolutely nothing about how production systems actually run in the real world. I taught him everything he knew. I showed him how to think about system dependencies, how to anticipate database locking issues before they brought down the application, and how to write clean code that would not crumble under heavy traffic. I stayed late helping him grasp complex network routing. I covered for him when he made rookie mistakes that could have gotten him fired. I recommended him for promotions, wrote glowing annual reviews, and vouched for his abilities when senior management had doubts about his technical depth. Then came the company-wide meeting last Tuesday. The chief executive officer, Gerald Albright, stood at the front of the auditorium with a slick presentation about corporate restructuring. My phone had been buzzing all morning, followed messages from colleagues asking if I was ready to take the vice president role. I would be lying if I said I had not hoped for it. 18 years of flawless performance reviews, 3 major database migrations that saved the company millions of dollars, and a department full of engineers I had personally mentored. The promotion felt like it was finally mine. Then the chief executive officer clicked to the next slide, and Bradley Shaw's smiling face filled the projection screen. "Please join me in congratulating our new vice president of engineering," Gerald Albright announced. Bradley's innovative thinking and leadership potential make him the perfect fit to lead our technology department. The room erupted in applause. I clapped too, muscle memory taking over while my brain struggled to process the sudden betrayal. Bradley stood up, shaking hands, his eyes scanning the room until they met mine. He had the decency to look uncomfortable for a split second, but the congratulations quickly washed his guilt away. Later that afternoon, the Human Resources Director, Beverly Finch, called me into her office. She wore a sympathetic look that felt rehearsed, sliding a folder across her desk. "We know you were hoping for the leadership position, Harvey," she said. "But we want you to know how deeply we value your technical contributions. That is why the company is offering you this special retention bonus." I opened the folder. It was a retention bonus of $18,000, paid out over 12 months, provided I stayed to assist with the transition. That was $1,500 a month before taxes to keep doing the work I had always done. While the person I trained took the credit, Bradley's starting salary as vice president is $340,000, Beverly continued, plus stock options and performance bonuses. But your role is technical, whereas his is leadership. They are different value propositions. I trained him, I said, my voice flat. He still asks me how to configure database clusters. And that mentorship is exactly why we need you to stay and support him during this critical transition, she said. I signed the paperwork because I was too stunned to do anything else. I walked back to my desk in a daze, only to find an email from Bradley waiting in my inbox. It was addressed to the entire engineering department, thanking me publicly for my invaluable guidance and stating how much he looked forward to working with me in his new capacity. That was 4 weeks ago. After Clara left for the clinic and Chloe boarded her bus, the house fell into that deep silence that only occurs on weekday mornings. I poured coffee and sat at the kitchen table, leaving my laptop closed. The phone continued its steady, silent vibration against the wood. I thought about all the times I had rushed to fix problems. I remembered weekends interrupted, family vacations cut short, and middle-of-the-night emergency calls that pulled me from sleep. I recalled the time I spent 18 hours straight rebuilding a corrupted database cluster while the sales department panicked about losing customer records. I remembered flying back early from my father's funeral because a critical system migration had stalled and nobody else in the building knew how to resolve it. I had sacrificed my time, my energy, and my family's peace, all under the assumption that loyalty would eventually be rewarded. I knew Bradley was probably in his brand new office by now, staring at the red dashboards and reaching for his phone because that was what he had always done whenever a system issue arose. The first call came at 6:45 in the morning. I let it ring through to voicemail. The second call came at 7:02. Voicemail again. At 7:20, my phone buzzed with a text message. Harvey, seeing critical databases. Are you on this? Need status update immediately. I sipped my coffee and did not reply. By 9 o'clock, I had 8 missed calls from Bradley, 4 from our technology director, and 3 from Beverly Finch in human resources. My personal email notification chimed with a message from Leah Brooks in accounting. Please tell me you are logged in and fixing whatever is broken, she had written. I cannot access the payroll ledger, and our client billing portal is throwing database timeouts. The company-wide communication channels were exploding. Customer databases were inaccessible, the main SaaS product was offline, and the public website was displaying gateway timeout errors. It was a complete operational disaster. Yet, I sat at my table, watching the alerts pile up, feeling something I had not experienced in 18 long years, freedom. For the first time, someone else's emergency was not my crisis. Someone else's incompetence was not my problem to solve. The heavy weight of responsibility that I had carried for nearly 2 decades suddenly evaporated. At 8:54, my doorbell rang. I was not expecting any visitors. I walked to the front door and peered through the peephole. Bradley Shaw stood on my porch, looking disheveled, his tie crooked and his face pale. I opened the door but stood firmly in the doorway, blocking the entrance. Harvey, Bradley said, his voice breathy and panicked. Thank goodness you are home. I tried calling your phone a dozen times. I know, I replied, my hands resting in my pockets. We have a massive database cluster failure, Bradley said, waving his hands in frustration. The entire production environment is unresponsive. I need you to log in immediately and restore the replication logs. No, I said. The word hung between us in the cold morning air. Bradley blinked, looking at me as if I had spoken a language he had never heard before. What do you mean, no? No, I repeated. I am not logging in today. But the database, Bradley stammered. The servers are down. You are the vice president of engineering now, Bradley, I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. That is a $340,000 a year position. This cluster failure seems like exactly the kind of technical leadership challenge you were promoted to handle. His face flushed red, shifting from embarrassment to sheer desperation. Harvey, come on. You know the replication architecture better than anyone in the industry. I cannot help you, I said. Why not? Bradley demanded. Are you refusing to do the job they pay you to do? That is not fair, I replied. You are in the leadership role designed to handle corporate emergencies. You have an entire department at your disposal, you have the system documentation, and you have access to the same administrative credentials that I do. But I do not, Bradley started, before stopping himself as he realized what he was about to admit. You do not know how to fix it, I finished for him. That is very interesting, considering your corporate resume lists you as an expert in database cluster design. And the chief executive officer praised your technical vision last week. Harvey, please, Bradley whispered. The company is losing tens of thousands of dollars every hour we are offline. Customers are threatening to cancel their contracts. The chief executive officer is screaming in the conference room. Then you should probably get back to the office and manage the situation, I said. I cannot do this without you, Bradley finally admitted, the truth slipping out. You are going to have to learn, I replied. After all, the management team believes you have incredible leadership potential. I am sure you will figure it out. I began to close the front door. Bradley quickly put his hand against the frame. Wait, just wait, he pleaded. What is it going to take? A salary raise? A larger retention bonus? Just tell me what you want to resolve this. It is not about the money, Bradley, I said. Then what? I do not understand. You have never walked away from a system crisis before. You are right, I said. I haven't. For 12 years, I solved every emergency you caused, fixed every mistake you made, and covered for every gap in your technical knowledge. And in return, the company gave me an $18,000 stay bonus and the privilege of watching the man I trained take the office I earned. I did not ask for this situation, Bradley. You took the title, the salary, and the office. Do not stand on my porch and pretend you are the victim. When I closed the door, Bradley did not stop me. I watched through the window as he walked back to his sedan, pulled out his phone, and began making frantic calls. He sat in his car for a long time, staring blankly at the dashboard before starting the engine and slowly driving away. My phone continued to vibrate on the kitchen counter. I silenced it completely, walked upstairs, and took a long, hot shower. I spent the rest of Thursday doing things I never had the time to do. I went to the supermarket, taking my time to browse the aisles instead of grabbing prepackaged meals on my way home from the office. I drove to Chloe's school to pick her up early, surprising her as she walked out of the building. We went to a local diner and ordered chocolate chip ice cream, even though it was October, and the New England breeze was already turning chilly. You are acting strange, Chloe said, waving her spoon. Is it a good strange or a bad strange, I asked. Just different strange, she decided. Did you quit your job? Not yet, I replied, a small smile appearing on my face. But maybe very soon. That is cool, Chloe said. You are always working. Dad always says you work too much at night. He was right, I admitted. When we got home, Clara was already there. She had swapped shifts with another nurse to spend the evening at home. She took one look at my face and sent Chloe upstairs to start her homework. All right, Clara said, leaning against the living room table. Talk to me. I told her everything. I explained the promotion, the insulting stay bonus, the database cluster crash, and Bradley showing up on our porch. Clara listened quietly as the afternoon faded. How much has the company lost today? She asked. If they are still down, it is hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost transactions, I replied. If they cannot restore the database by tomorrow, it could easily exceed $1 million. And you could fix it, she asked. In about 50 minutes, yes, I replied. But you are not going to, she said. No, I am not, I said. Clara walked over and sat next to me. Good, she said softly. Harvey, I have watched you give your entire life to that company for 18 years. I have seen you exhausted, stressed, and burned out. I have sat with Chloe while she cried, because you missed another school recital for an emergency server migration. I never complained because I knew how much your career meant to you. But if you are finally drawing a line, then I stand by you completely. I had not cried during the entire ordeal, but hearing her words, feeling her complete support, finally broke my composure. I let the tears fall, releasing 18 years of accumulated pressure. Friday morning, I woke up naturally at 6:50. No alarms, no emergency alerts. Clara was in the kitchen making pancakes, which we only did on major holidays. "What is the occasion?" I asked, walking in. "Celebrating your newfound freedom," Clara said. Flipping a pancake with a smile, I checked my phone over breakfast. I had 23 missed calls and 47 unread emails. The most recent email, sent at 10:35 the night before by Bradley, simply read, "We are still down. 17 hours." They had been fighting the cluster failure for 17 hours, and they still had no solution. A problem I could have resolved before lunchtime had turned into an overnight disaster. At 8:10 in the morning, Beverly Finch called again. I let it go to voicemail twice, but when she called a third time, I finally answered. "Harvey." "Thank goodness," Beverly said, her voice tight with stress. "We need you in the office immediately. Gerald Albright has cleared his entire schedule to meet with you." "That is not necessary," I said. "I am afraid it is," Beverly insisted. "This situation has become critical. We are facing massive financial losses and severe reputational damage." "That is unfortunate," I said, "but I am not sure what that has to do with me. I am a senior systems engineer." "Beverly, you told me yourself that my role is technical, not leadership. This outage seems like a leadership problem." "Harvey, let us be adults about this," she said, her voice dropping. "I am being extremely adult," I replied. "I am setting professional boundaries. I am scheduled to work from home today, and I am not volunteering my personal after-hours time to resolve problems outside my job description. This could be viewed as job abandonment," Beverly warned. "Could it?" I asked. "I have not been assigned any technical tickets, and no one reached out to me through our official engineering ticketing channels. I am simply not working overtime without compensation. Tell Gerald I will come into the office on Monday morning. We can have a proper conversation then." I hung up before she could respond. I spent Friday afternoon meeting my old colleague Hannah for lunch, a meeting I had canceled 4 times over the past year. Afterward, I researched competing firms and updated my resume. Recruiters had been trying to contact me for months. By the end of the afternoon, I had 3 interviews scheduled, with one firm offering a starting base salary of $240,000. Saturday was a blissfully normal day. Chloe had her friends over, the house filled with the sound of laughter, and I spent the afternoon grilling burgers in the backyard. I did not log into the company system once. On Sunday evening, I finally opened my work email. Among the flood of messages, I found an update from Bradley sent late Friday afternoon. It stated that the databases had finally been restored at 2:15 in the afternoon on Friday, after bringing in external systems consultants. The cluster had been offline for 42 hours. Curiosity got the better of me, and I logged into the read-only database replica logs to investigate what had actually triggered the crash. What I found made my blood run cold. It was not a simple accident. Someone had pushed a major database schema modification directly to the production cluster late Wednesday night without running it through the staging environment. The security systems at Apex Core were designed to block unauthorized deployments unless they carried a digital authorization signature from a senior systems engineer. I pulled up the security logs for the release authorization document. There, stamped in clear text, was my own digital signature, but I had been asleep at 10:30 Wednesday night. I checked the server access logs. The cryptographic release authorization had been uploaded from a remote virtual private network IP address registered to Bradley Shaw's home internet connection. To bypass the corporate compliance controls and expedite the deployment, Bradley had copied my private cryptographic key and forged my electronic signature on the official deployment release form. I knew the law. Under Section 470 of the California Penal Code, forging an electronic signature on a corporate authorization document to bypass security compliance is a felony. By forging my signature to force the database modification, Bradley had committed a crime. The forged authorization was void ab initio, meaning it was legally invalid from the very beginning. This meant Apex Core had run a major system deployment that violated state and federal database security compliance regulations, exposing the enterprise to massive regulatory fines. I downloaded the access logs, the IP address records, and the forged authorization form, copying them to a secure personal drive. I had my weapon. On Monday morning, I wore my best charcoal suit and walked into the Apex Core headquarters at 9:30. The receptionist looked startled when she saw me. "Mr. Vance," she whispered, "they are waiting for you in the executive boardroom on the top floor." The executive boardroom was a space I had only visited 3 times in 18 years. It featured glass walls, leather chairs, and a sweeping view of the city. Inside, I found the Chief Executive Officer, Gerald Albright, the Human Resources Director, Beverly Finch, the Chief Financial Officer, Owen Stone, and Bradley, who looked like he had not slept in days. "Harvey," Gerald said, standing up and gesturing to an empty chair. "Thank you for joining us." I remained standing, placing my hands on the back of the leather chair. "I prefer to stand," I said. The Chief Financial Officer, Owen Stone, slid a sheet of paper across the polished mahogany table toward me. "Harvey, this is the preliminary financial impact report," Owen said. "The total cost of this database outage, including lost transactions, contract penalties, and the emergency consultant fees, is currently estimated at $3,600,000. I looked at the sheet but did not say a word. Gerald Albright leaned forward, his expression hardening. "We understand you were completely unreachable during this operational emergency, Harvey. As a senior member of the technical staff, your refusal to assist during a crisis of this magnitude constitutes gross negligence. We are discussing the immediate termination of your employment, and the board is considering legal action to hold you financially liable for the damages." I looked at Gerald, then at Bradley, who was staring down at his coffee cup. "You want to hold me liable?" I asked, my voice calm. "You intentionally allowed our systems to remain offline to settle a personal grudge over Bradley's promotion," Beverly Finch said. "That is a clear violation of your employment agreement." "What happened last week was not a failure of technical support," I said, looking directly at Gerald. "It was a failure of corporate governance and security compliance. The database crash was caused by an unauthorized configuration deployment pushed late Wednesday night." Bradley's head snapped up, his eyes widening in panic. "We are aware of the configuration issue," Gerald said, waving his hand dismissively. "It was an error made during a rushed deployment. Bradley has already taken responsibility for the team's mistake." "It was not a team mistake," I replied, pulling a printed document from my briefcase and sliding it across the table. "It was a criminal act. To bypass our automated deployment blocks, someone forged my electronic signature on the release authorization document. This document shows the cryptographic signature was applied using an active session originating from Bradley Shaw's home IP address while I was asleep." The boardroom went completely silent. Beverly Finch pulled the printed sheet toward her, her eyes scanning the IP addresses and security log timestamps. As she read, her rehearsed composure evaporated. She looked over at Bradley, whose mouth opened but no sound came out. "Under Section 470 of the California Penal Code," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room, "forging a digital signature on an internal compliance document is a felony. Bradley used my credentials to bypass our database safeguards. Because this release authorization was forged, it is void ab initio. Legally, the deployment was unauthorized, which means Apex Corps has been in direct violation of federal data protection standards for the last 42 hours. If our institutional clients or the compliance auditors find out that we allowed an illegal deployment to take down the production databases, the legal liability and fines will make the $3,600,000 in outage costs look like pocket change." Owen Stone, the Chief Financial Officer, turned his gaze to Bradley. "Is this true, Bradley?" he asked, his voice cold. I was just trying to get the new client database online," Bradley stammered, his face pale. "The system was locked, and Harvey was asleep. I did not think it would crash." "You committed a felony to bypass compliance," Owen said, rubbing his temples in frustration. Gerald Albright stared at Bradley for several seconds, then looked back at me. "What are you looking for, Harvey? Are you planning to take this to the regulators?" "I am not interested in destroying this company," I said. "I spent 18 years building it. But I refuse to work under a manager who commits crimes to cover his lack of technical competence. I want Bradley's position. I want to be the vice president of engineering." Bradley gasped. "You cannot do that." "Quit, Bradley," Gerald snapped. He turned back to me, his eyes calculating. "We cannot simply dismiss the vice president without causing a public relations disaster, Harvey. Then create a new lateral position for him, I replied. Move him to strategic innovation where he cannot touch the production databases. But I want the title, the authority, and the office. I want my base salary set at $391,000, which matches Bradley's salary plus a 15% increase for my years of service. I want 5 weeks of paid time off, and I want clear work-life balance clauses written into my contract, including an hourly rate for any after-hours emergency consultation. Gerald looked at Owen, then at Beverly. Beverly gave a slow, barely perceptible nod. The legal risk of a compliance audit failure and a public forgery lawsuit was far too high. "We will draft the agreement," Gerald said, leaning back in his chair. "We will transition Bradley to a strategic innovation role over the next 2 weeks. We will announce your promotion to Vice President of Engineering on Wednesday." "I want the contract in writing by Tuesday afternoon," I said. "And then I will log in to review the database recovery steps." "You will have the contract," Gerald agreed. The meeting ended. As I walked out of the boardroom, Bradley followed me into the hallway. He looked completely defeated. "Harvey," he said quietly, "I did not mean for this to happen. I actually recommended you for the vice president spot originally. I told Gerald you deserved it." I stopped and looked at him. "Then why did they pass me over?" "Gerald told me you were too valuable as a senior systems engineer," Bradley admitted. "He said, if we promoted you to leadership, we would lose the only person who actually knew how to keep the servers running. They wanted me to manage the meetings while you did all the heavy lifting." I felt a shift in my chest, not of forgiveness but of clarity. Gerald had manipulated us both, using Bradley's ambition and my dedication to keep the company running on cheap labor. "They played us," I said. "I am sorry it ended this way, Bradley." "Yeah," he replied quietly. "Me too." I signed my new employment contract on Tuesday afternoon, and the company-wide announcement went out on Wednesday morning. The reaction from the engineering team was immediate. The developers and administrators sent a flood of congratulatory messages, relieved that someone who actually understood the infrastructure was finally in charge. Over the next 4 months, things changed at Apex Core. I did not spend my nights fixing databases. Instead, I restructured the department, hiring 3 new systems administrators and implementing strict peer review processes. I made sure that no single person was a point of failure, and I protected my team's personal time as fiercely as my own. One Friday evening, I closed my laptop at exactly 4:30 in the afternoon. I drove home, picked up Clara and Chloe, and we went to the movie theater. Sitting in the dark room with my daughter on one side and my wife on the other, I felt a sense of balance I had not experienced in 18 years. My phone was silent in my pocket, and the database was running perfectly. If you are listening to my journey on this channel, thank you for your support. Sometimes standing up for your worth feels terrifying, but remember that your value is not defined by how much you sacrifice for a company. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing. We are trying to reach 12,000 subscribers, and your support helps us bring more stories of workplace justice to light.